Greetings, humans! Zbot1496 here, with a modern retrospective look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe's Phase 1 arc, from Iron Man to the Avengers. We realized that last week we said we planned to dual scan all 22 films from Phase 1 to 3, to end with Avengers Endgame, but as a reasonable being may have predicted, we simply could not align our dual processor plan with our dedicated MCU-DCU processor Cyborg 1618. However, we were able to get to the Avengers and reach a reasonable milestone in the sequence. As for the form of our retrospective look, we will share our high-level analysis of the arc of the 6 films to establish a baseline, and then focus on how this set of films lands today to our modern senses. Today, we know the MCU is one of the most successful and intricately planned movie series humans have ever made, with producer Kevin Feige releasing 35 films as of this review. They've broken records and given a generation of humans characters to identify with. Now, one might discount this achievement by citing the proven track record of these stories from the comics upon which they are based, but this undercredits the amount of effort to adapt them to an altogether different medium and also resync them to fit the sensibilities of a modern audience. But all of this would be for naught had the first film failed to deliver. But it did. Iron Man released in 2008 and managed to strike a magical balance. As directed by Jon Favreau and starring Robert Downey Jr. in the title role, the film crafted a character and journey that pulled together their collective talent for comic timing and delivery with charming confidence running headlong into consequences and believable emotional change. This is a lot to get from a superhero film around a character who is not a global favorite like Batman, although he kind of is a Batman, or like Superman or Spider-Man. We hadn't read or heard of him before seeing the film initially in theaters, but it delivered. And as we know now, Iron Man's was the mask that launched 1,000 ships. But upon a fresh viewing, we picked up some interesting nuances that had otherwise faded into off-site storage. For one, the arc of Tony Stark is as central to the validity of the story as is the arc reactor in the literal plot of the film. That arc of the character and the theme of the film is that when you are given a second chance, make it count for more than yourself. It sounds trite in the abstract, but in the context of being a weapons manufacturer, as Obadiah Stane pronounces it, a war profiteer, and seeing what his weapons actually do, seeing the innocents put in danger, and ultimately his loved ones, he is prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice. It helps that this clear and defined character arc is well suited to being identified with among humans today, even if they aren't genius billionaire playboy philanthropists like Tony Stark. The fact is that a large number of humans have an exaggerated view of their attributes and apply a fake-it-till-you-make-it philosophy to all things, and find themselves, at some point, at the apex of accomplishment, driven by self-interest. One might say that's the very definition of capitalism, and that no better form of human organization exists. We do not necessarily concede the point, but do accept that humans have historically adopted worse systems, so we understand how they might reach that conclusion. It is telling, however, that Earth has few other examples of billionaires who become altruistic to this extent, meaning putting one's life on the line beyond the tax write-off of philanthropy, other than perhaps the DC version of Iron Man, as we stated, Batman, but the readers of Marvel and the audience of the MCU can see an authenticity in the presentation of the character, and the potential to be better beings by the end of it. This is a fantastic accomplishment beyond merely stating that the plot is engrossing, or the characters are fun, or the dialogue is great, which are all true incidentally. It's that on this viewing, it's also clear that this film has been saying something important and timeless all along, without being on the nose about it. One immediate side effect of this arc is that we believe the relationship between Tony Stark and Pepper Potts, played with both heart and wit by the talented Gwyneth Paltrow. We typically don't find the couples in the MCU have much, if any, chemistry, but we do see these two connecting. We can see what she sees in him. Even when he's acting boorishly, he has a way of acknowledging and listening to her, even when it seems like he's missing the point. And often we see that he was listening all along. He is lucky to have her in his life. Her ability to see the big picture and yet hold him accountable provide essential elements to their relationship. We really enjoy seeing them together on screen and didn't fully appreciate how or why until now. And of course, the film has the best ending of any superhero film before or since. Tony Stark's declaration is magnificently self-assured and shows that he's not going to march to the beat of anyone's drum but his own. Of course, in retrospect, that instant had instant consequences. And we'll get back to that. The next film, The Incredible Hulk, released the same year, 2008, and was decidedly off in areas that make Iron Man stand out and stand the test of time. Hulk has a good story and a great antagonist in the form of William Hurt's General Ross, but the two leads, Edward Norton and Liv Tyler, simply do not work. The script doesn't give them much range. Norton's Banner strikes a single morose, hunched-over note, or almost the whole film. His arc is a bit mild, in that accepting one's faults can help you succeed. It's a good message, but lacking in range in holding attention for a 2-hour runtime. Liv Tyler comes off as soft and ineffective in response to this, a damsel in distress with little agency. We don't buy their relationship, and despite the tragedy of their lives together, we feel there's little actually holding them together. What does she see in Bruce? This isn't an indictment of either actor. Both have demonstrated the range we expected here, in Fight Club and The Lord of the Rings, respectively. We just don't get them here. The same is true of Tim Roth as the main antagonist, who appears worn out, hunched over, and squeaky-voiced, and utterly devoid of the personality burst we usually get from him, like in Pulp Fiction. The fresh realization we have coming out of this is that the film was miscast for its 3 leads, and that brought down our ability to go with the storytelling. It's otherwise a fine action movie with a real theme, but is challenging to sit through because the characters are unimportant. And yet, it's a better film than we remember. Now, the third film is Iron Man 2, which was released in 2010. Tony's brash way of being a superhero has immediate consequences, and the theme emerges of taking responsibility for your actions before others take them for you. It's a good theme, and we have organically driven elements that come forward, such as the son of the tossed-aside co-creator of the arc reactor, played with brutal assurance by Mickey Rourke. We also get the effete comic overload of Tony Stark's competitor Justin Hammer, played with brilliantly portioned smarm by Sam Rockwell. Both are versions of Tony Stark. Both are makers of war machines, one embodying monomania, the other charmed self-delusion. Again, it's a better film than we remember, although we don't agree with the choice to regress Tony Stark into a thoughtless clown at the Senate hearing, and later a falling down drunk risking the lives of partygoers. No, well, we do appreciate the menace of Rourke's Ivan Vanko, as well as his affection for his bud, one of the very few characters in the entire MCU who cares for a pet. We also love Justin Hammer's weaselly second-place pushiness and his complete lack of self-awareness, and his boss baby dance trot onto the stage at the Stark Expo. This film is positively chock full of forgotten delights. But by regressing Tony as much as it does, it also partially unwinds the arc of Iron Man, the original film, only to give this film enough space to show roughly the same arc again. It's a good theme, and Stark and Potts continue to have great chemistry together, so we're ultimately giving the film a pass as well. Next came Thor in 2011, and what a surprising palate cleanser that film turned out as. Coming from watching 3 very intense films in a row, we are treated to a fish-out-of-water story. The superhero in question, Thor, played by Chris Hemsworth, as directed by legendary Shakespearean actor-director Kenneth Branagh, no less, is rendered mortal and alone on Earth, having to make sense of his new circumstances, while Natalie Portman's Jane Foster sees glimpses of knowledge and kindness among the muscles and fairy tale references, and Tom Hiddleston's Loki manipulates his pride and melancholy. The premise here is that worth is not determined by wielding power, but by sacrifice for others. This is, of course, a magnificent theme, and one that powerful beings can always use a reminder of. In this film, the determination of worth is set in motion by Odin, King of Asgard, father of Thor, played by legendary Shakespearean and Hannibal Lecter actor Anthony Hopkins. His performance effectively conveys both the wisdom and limitations of tradition, fatherhood, leadership, and sets up Mjolnir the hammer as a kind of specific artificial intelligence to decide who is worthy of lifting it. We aren't told explicitly what worth means until we see Thor's arc complete, and he demonstrates an essential hallmark of leadership, self-sacrifice, for the benefit of those under threat. This works well, and Hemsworth shows his worth as well, delivering Thor's transformation as well as an endearing gentleness under the bravado. At the same time, we don't quite buy the relationship between Hemsworth's Thor and Portman's Foster. They just don't seem to have chemistry. It's not as bad as Hayden Christensen's Anakin and Portman's Padme, but it's still somewhat incongruous. When he lands on Earth, Thor is a bit of an impotent rage monster spouting fairy tales, while Foster is an astrophysicist. The only thing that seems to change that is when Thor walks in shirtless. It's played for laughs, but it also underscores the point that there's something missing here. Setting that aside, we are indeed smitten with the Shakespearean melodrama of Asgard, the clever integration of Norse mythology with some semblance of technological, cultural, and biological grounding. Perhaps the fact that this is the first MCU film to feature aliens, and does so with nuance and depth, makes it resonate with us. This Thor doesn't have the Superman problem of being invincible. He is vulnerable in several ways, and has to pull himself out of a hole of his own making. That alone is worth the price of admission, and again speaks highly of humans overall, that they acknowledge that their protagonists, as proxies for themselves, are capable of fault, admitting fault, and taking responsibility for the consequences. While we didn't miss this the first time, the point is gracefully woven throughout the film on a fresh viewing. We see different angles on that question, with Loki demonstrating a gleeful disregard for any ownership of his own role in his deeply felt slights. Made that much more engaging by Hiddleston's performance, of course. More on that in a bit. The next one up was 2011's Captain America: The First Avenger, played by another up-and-coming Chris, this one a Chris Evans. This film surprised us, since the jingoistic and anachronistic character of Captain America has one's optic sensors set to roll, but instead the film took ownership of that, used that as a way for the character to prove himself to in-universe skeptics, and deliver a story that shockingly works in its historical context and through to a modern context. And in what is apparently an emerging theme with us, it's the theme of this film that lands exceptionally well with us. Not being familiar with Captain America, aka Steve Rogers, we were again surprised to see his journey playing out a very compelling theme. Namely, the idea that a being who has only known weakness is actually the one best suited to wield strength. And again, an extraordinary cast gives life to the adventure, with Tommy Lee Jones as the gruff general, Stanley Tucci as the scientist who offers the theme stated in Act 1, Haley Atwell is the supervisor who sees the earnest selflessness in Steve Rogers, Sebastian Stan as Bucky, his friend who stood up for him and in turn needs Rogers to rescue him in Germany, and Hugo Weaving is Hitler's deep science head Johann Schmidt, an early recipient of the super soldier serum that transforms Rogers but leaves Schmidt with a gruesome visage. If this sounds like a World War II movie, that's because it is. And that's the hook that makes the jokey Captain America character work. It's already out of sync with time and space, and yet gives us a plausible way to contextualize a setting that would allow an earnest Captain America character to become a legend. It's a conceit that the Wonder Woman movie would later use, albeit set in World War I, but to the same effect, of giving a person out of time a legitimacy that helps them fit. What lands differently for us this time is that we actually do buy the relationship between Rogers and Haley Atwell's Peggy Carter. Their whole will they or won't they back and forth also borrows from the World War II era, and them connecting is presented as truly meaningful to both of them. In retrospect, the manufactured plasticity of Captain America drops away here, and we see this as a film about Steve and Peggy, as much as it is a serial adventure about punching Nazis. And that gives it a resonance that echoes through the MCU, which we will pick up again when we get there. But before then, we have The Avengers. This 2012 film is the intersection of all the threads we've experienced in these otherwise standalone films. Everything about this film works. Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury finally activates the Avengers initiative once Loki returns and steals the Tesseract, bringing all the discordant Avengers together, plus 2 humans with uncanny abilities, Arrow Guy and Black Widow. Naturally, we had a positive response when the film came out. It's an exciting thrill ride from start to finish, with moments to cheer and an epilogue that is absolutely hysterical. The overt theme of the film is that a team of misfits can cover each other's weaknesses with their strengths. Which is another timeless message, of course, but the thing that reaches out of the screen for us was the depth of those weaknesses that each of these heroes carry. Tony Stark is not to be trusted, he's selfish, and he proves it. Nick Fury has been dabbling in powers he cannot control. Bruce Banner is so shredded he attempted suicide. Captain America is a fish out of water, out of time, he can barely keep up. And Thor is at once condescending to everyone, while being implicated as the brother of the villain. What became clear on this viewing is how each alone would have failed. The Chitauri middleman says, "The humans are unruly, and therefore cannot be ruled." But we think he's grossly misstating what happened. Being unruly is incidental. What the humans have is an ability to set their differences aside and see them as strengths. This is an incredibly potent idea, and one that is essentially a prerequisite for a civilization to survive its adolescence and become accepted into galactic society. That this would emerge is the point of the film, in a way that is not on the nose, but gracefully evades overt detection on an initial viewing, is a masterful weaving together of the MCU threads to date. And the effort was rewarded with a box office record of $1.5 billion, which is a lot of human money, and an ongoing string of successful films to follow, something that was absolutely unprecedented. And that is the biggest thing for us to recognize here. Phase 1 of the MCU is not only better than we remember for each of its component parts, but a masterclass in proven, planned, and well-woven storytelling. For the proven part, they had the comic books themselves, with both critical and commercial data underlying the creative. They clearly planned this arc as well. Not in the sense that they knew for a fact that each subsequent film would be made, but rather that they could breadcrumb some tidbits that could serve dual purposes in not only establishing each film as a clear and complete story, but also as an episode in a larger rippling universe. A butterfly effect of storytelling, if you will. And the skill of that storytelling, superseding hackneyed comic book presentation and dated sentimentality with modern questions, a more mature take on personhood and consequences, and the expert application of proven filmmaking styles to deliver entertainment that is on the one hand delivering what we are conditioned to look for, while at the same time delivering something new, something fresh, and something that resonates in different ways at different times. 13 Earth years have passed since the Avengers hit the screen, and we have a lot more to talk about what happened after, both good and not so good, but for this arc of 6 films, we are nothing short of astonished at not only how well they have held up, but how relevant and meaningful they strike home today. For delivering universally meaningful themes in thrilling and emotionally powerful ways, despite starting with comic book characters while still authentically processing them through into the cinematic dimension, we give the Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 1 our highest retrospective rating. And so concludes this human version of our review. If you have feedback on it, please write in your own comments so that we can upload the galactic version to Zoggplex. Next week, we aim to continue this audacious plan, but with different content. We cannot help but draw parallels, both spoken and unspoken, between the MCU and Star Wars. And therefore, next week, we will return to that long ago time in that galaxy far, far away and provide a retrospective of the original Star Wars trilogy. So you see, you can expect more discussions and reviews of theatrical movies, streaming shows, and 4K home video releases as we continue to engage with your human rectangular entertainment. So please watch, like, subscribe, and comment so that we can continue to have the human voice reflected in the cosmos. Till next time, farewell, humans.